This woman's mother-in-law lost her cat, emptied her credit cards, and said she owed her because she raised her son, all while refusing to leave her house. And that's not even the craziest part. What's up, guys? Welcome back to AITA Chronicles, your daily fix of the most jaw-dropping AITA drama straight from Reddit. If you're into unfiltered chaos, messy family feuds, and dilemmas that make you question humanity, you're in the right place. We're on the road to 10K subscribers, and every like, comment, and sub helps us get there. So hit that button, and let's dive into some of the most unhinged AITA stories yet. Title: Am I the asshole for telling my neighbor she should check her husband and not me? This all started on what was supposed to be a simple, ordinary day. The writer, mid-deep cleaning session, was probably sweating through the to-do list most of us dread: dusting, scrubbing, vacuuming, the works. Music playing, the sun streaming in through a small gap in the curtains. Just a normal day in a house that's been theirs for over 13 years. Then bam, a knock on the door. And not just any knock, the kind that interrupts your flow and gives you that weird sinking feeling. Standing on the porch is a woman. She introduces herself as the new neighbor. No big deal, right? A little unexpected mid-cleaning, but fine, until she says something that flips the entire situation on its head. She says she feels uncomfortable because of the way the writer dresses while cleaning. The writer's immediate reaction? Confusion. Because how could this woman, this stranger, be uncomfortable about something happening inside someone else's house? It turns out it wasn't about her, not directly, it was her husband. He had apparently been watching the writer through their window, staring. And now the wife, not the husband, was at the writer's doorstep with some sort of twisted complaint. Let's stop here for a second. Can you imagine? You're in your own house, just existing, just trying to wipe down baseboards and fold laundry, and suddenly you're the problem because someone else's husband can't respect boundaries? It's already deeply unsettling. Now back to the story. The writer glances down at their outfit, a sports bra and shorts, standard cleaning attire in your own home. Nothing inappropriate, certainly nothing warranting a confrontation. So the writer, still reeling from this unexpected accusation, responds with the obvious. Maybe this woman should be having this conversation with her husband and not with the writer, who is minding her business in the privacy of her own space. That response? It didn't go over well. Apparently, the suggestion that this woman check her husband lit a fuse. She got mad, started trying to escalate things. But really, what was the writer supposed to say? Apologize for being seen while existing in their own house? This is where things start feeling more sinister than awkward, because the writer mentions that their windows do have curtains. The only opening is a narrow gap to let in natural light, something we all want in our homes. So this man wasn't accidentally catching a glimpse. He was intentionally looking through that gap. That's not on the writer. That's straight up voyeuristic behavior. But it doesn't end there. In the update, we learn the writer didn't just let this go. She notified some of her other neighbors, made a police report, even contacted their landlord. That's not overreacting. That's smart. Because when someone's peering into your house uninvited, especially repeatedly, you do have to take steps to protect yourself. And get this. While the husband remains mostly invisible, only seen getting in and out of his car, the wife has now made it her personal mission to watch the writer. She's always around, always staring, always present, like some judgmental specter haunting the street. And what does she do next? She starts talking to another neighbor, complaining that the writer was rude to her, as if being called out for blaming the wrong person somehow hurt her, more than the fact that her husband had been watching someone else behind her back. Here's the real kicker. The writer never even initiated contact. They were just existing in their home, living life, and suddenly they're dragged into this absurd, almost creepy drama because someone else can't manage their household. So, am I the asshole? Let's be brutally honest. Absolutely not. Not even close. The writer didn't confront anyone, didn't lash out. They responded after being accused of making someone uncomfortable in their own home. That's not being an asshole. That's defending yourself. And frankly, not enough people do that when confronted with ridiculous accusations. What really chills me is the underlying message here. Someone else's lack of control, lack of boundaries, and lack of accountability somehow became your problem. The mental gymnastics this woman did to turn her husband's behavior into a you issue is mind-blowing. There's a quiet violation in being watched without your consent. It's not dramatic in the way movies portray it, but it's just as real. That feeling that someone's eyes are on you when they shouldn't be, it's invasive. It changes how you move in your own space, your safe space. And the fact that this woman is now walking around the neighborhood with a narrative that you were rude, that's not just manipulative, it's dangerous. It's the beginning of how reputations get twisted, how rumors grow legs. So, no, you're not the asshole. You're someone who stood up for yourself in the face of a situation that was inappropriate from the moment she knocked on your door. And if anyone needs to do a little soul searching and ask themselves the real question, it's her, and more importantly, him. Title: Am I the asshole for not telling my sister the name chosen for my unborn son because she used her BFF's baby name for her daughter? This isn't just a story about baby names. It's about trust, patterns, and the quiet tension that builds when someone close to you crosses a line and never really apologizes for it. So let's rewind a bit. The writer and their sister are both expecting a moment that should bring joy, shared cravings, nursery plans, maybe even those silly sibling baby bump photos. But instead, there's an unspoken anxiety hanging in the air, a history that lingers like a shadow. You see, this isn't the first time the writer has watched their sister in action when it comes to baby names. And what happened last time? It wasn't pretty. 3 years ago, when the sister was pregnant with her first child, a baby girl, she spent months, claiming she had no clue what to name her. Her best friend, who was also pregnant at the same time, had already picked out a name for her daughter, a name she clearly loved, a name that meant something to her. But then, just before giving birth, the sister suddenly magically has a name picked out, the exact same first and middle name her BFF had chosen. When the baby is born, that's the name that gets announced. Cue chaos. Her best friend was understandably devastated. It's one thing to accidentally stumble onto the same name. It's another thing entirely when someone you trust, someone close to you, uses the exact name you've been planning and acts like it's no big deal. But the sister, she brushed it off, said it was first come, first serve, like naming a child is a race, not a reflection of meaning, identity, and connection. That's not just inconsiderate, that's calculated, that's cold. Fast forward to now, the writer is pregnant for the first time. A boy, her sister is pregnant too, also with a boy. And this time she's due first. And that little detail, that matters because the writer remembers how her sister behaved last time, how she scooped up someone else's name idea and justified it with timing. And she isn't about to let history repeat itself. So what does she do? She and her husband decide no one is going to know the name they've chosen, not even the gender, not until after their baby is born. It's a quiet act of self-protection, not drama, just peace, privacy, something every expecting parent is entitled to. But of course, the sister starts asking. At first, casually, what's the name? What are you thinking? Then she asks about girl names too. It's subtle, but there's an edge to it, like she's trying to probe, trying to corner the writer into revealing something she can use. And the writer stands firm. She doesn't say a word. She even throws out a few decoy names to get her sister off her trail. But the sister isn't fooled. She pushes harder, even drags the question into a family setting, putting the writer on the spot as if peer pressure will get the job done. And that's when the truth slips out, not from the writer, but from their brother. In a moment of sharp honesty, cloaked in humor, he jokes, "Nobody should tell the baby name thief their name." And just like that, the room changes. The sister is upset, not because the joke was cruel, but because it hit a nerve, because someone dared to call her out, even indirectly, for something she's never truly owned up to. She argues that it's unfair, that the writer is holding something against her that she never did to her personally. And their mom chimes in too, asking why the writer can't just share the name, because if the sister did steal it, everyone would know who had it first. But here's the thing. It's not about who gets credit. It's about not having to fight for something so personal in the first place. It's about trust. And the writer? She no longer has that when it comes to her sister and baby names. And honestly, who can blame her? People treat naming a baby like some kind of trivial decision, but it's intimate. It's tied to your dreams, your culture, your hopes. Sometimes it's a name you've had in your heart since childhood, and to have someone take that from you, not out of coincidence, but out of selfish convenience, that's not just annoying. That hurts. The writer's sister made it clear years ago, when push comes to shove, she'll put her needs before anyone else's, even if it means damaging a friendship or betraying trust. That kind of behavior doesn't just get erased with time, it lingers. And now, when the writer is in the middle of one of the most vulnerable experiences of her life, pregnancy, she's choosing to protect her peace. That's not being petty. That's being smart. So, am I the asshole? No. No, you're not. You're someone who learned from what they saw, someone who values their child's name and their own emotional safety enough to set boundaries. Your sister may not like it, but maybe this time she doesn't get to make that decision for you. She already crossed one line. She doesn't get to set the terms this time. And the best part? Your baby's name will come into this world with no drama attached. Just love. Just intention. Just your own story, not a recycled chapter from someone else's. Title, Am I the Asshole for dumping my boyfriend for saying a woman's period is just another excuse for a woman to reject sex? There are moments in a relationship, quiet, subtle moments, where something shifts. It doesn't have to be a big fight or a betrayal that makes headlines. Sometimes it's a single sentence, a handful of words that pierce through the illusion you've been holding on to. And once they land, once you hear them, there's no going back. You can't unhear them. You shouldn't. The writer, a 27-year-old woman, was navigating a tender, emotionally raw season of life. She openly admits she doesn't fully trust her own judgment right now. That kind of honesty? That alone deserves some compassion, because it's hard enough making difficult decisions, but it's even harder when you're in a vulnerable headspace. She'd been dating her boyfriend, 28 years old, for nearly a year and a half. That's not just some fling. That's shared holidays, merged routines, late-night talks about the future, 17 months of building something. But in a single moment, it all started to crumble. The night things fell apart, the writer told her boyfriend she wasn't in the mood for sex because she was on her period. A sentence many women have said without thinking twice. A completely normal, valid, and frankly personal reason to say no. A reason that shouldn't need to be defended, let alone debated. But instead of respecting that boundary, her boyfriend took a hard left turn. He suggested they could still have sex, and she declined again. Simple, respectable, clear. But then, like a mask slipping, he launched into a rant so loaded with misogyny, so laced with entitlement that it genuinely makes your stomach turn. He said, and let this sink in, a woman's period is just another excuse for a woman to reject sex. Yeast infections, just gave birth, not in the mood, blah, blah, blah. But somehow, a woman never offers her mouth nor her ass when her vagina is allegedly out of service. Let's stop there. That's not just crude. That's not just disrespectful. That's dehumanizing. This wasn't a slip-up or an offhanded comment. This was a window into how he views women, their bodies, and their autonomy. In that one rant, he reduced every complex, painful, emotional, and deeply personal experience that women go through, menstruation, postpartum recovery, discomfort, lack of desire, into a punchline, an inconvenience to his libido. And then he immediately tried to backpedal, as if stuffing the words back into his mouth could undo the harm. As if saying, I didn't mean it, could make the writer unhear the selfishness, the entitlement, the sheer audacity. But here's the truth. Once someone shows you who they are, it doesn't matter how quickly they apologize. The damage isn't in the words alone, it's in the way they make you feel. And the writer? She couldn't see him the same way again. How could she? This was more than a crude comment. This was a man showing his true colors in a moment where empathy, not lust, should have led the way. When you're with someone intimately, you're trusting them with your most vulnerable self. Your body, your mind, your emotions. You're trusting that when you say no, it'll be heard, that when you're in pain, you won't be guilted, that your worth isn't measured by your sexual availability. But for this man, A no became an opportunity to rant about how inconvenient women are when they assert control over their own bodies. That says more about him than any apology ever could. So, am I the asshole? Not even close. The writer made a decision rooted in self-respect. She chose to walk away from someone who showed not only a lack of basic empathy, but a stunning level of entitlement. And let's not gloss over how hard that is. Ending a 17-month relationship isn't easy, especially when you're already in an emotionally fragile place. But sometimes it's in those fragile moments where your instincts speak the loudest, where the fog lifts and you realize you deserve better. You deserve to feel safe, respected, and heard, even and especially when you say no. So no, writer, you're not the asshole. You're the one who remembered your worth when someone else forgot it entirely. Title: Am I the asshole for refusing to comply with my ex-wife's husband's rules about what my kids can eat so they can go to their mom's house? Let's set the stage. Divorced for 7 years, 2 young boys, shared custody, a new stepdad in the picture, and suddenly, a list. Not a list of chores, not a holiday schedule. No, this list was of foods, a bizarre food ban handed down, not by the children's mother, but by her new husband. And here's the twist. This wasn't about what the boys like to eat. It was about what they can't eat, ever, not even at their father's house. The writer, a father in his 30s, shares 2 sons, ages 8 and 9, with his ex-wife. Their custody arrangement seems straightforward, alternating weeks. A rhythm that had likely become routine until the ex-wife remarried. Enter the stepfather. He comes with kids of his own, and more notably a daughter with severe food allergies. Now let's pause here. Allergies are serious. Life-threatening, even. No one's minimizing that. But this story takes a hard left into controlling territory fast. 5 months into the new marriage, the stepfather sends the writer a list of banned foods: peanut butter, eggs, cheese, strawberries, chocolate. These are not fringe items. These are staples in most childhood diets. Comfort foods, lunchbox essentials, birthday party norms. The stepfather didn't ask if the writer could avoid these foods when the boys were at his house. No, he demanded they be completely eliminated from the boys' diets, even during their time with their own father. Why? Because when the kids return to their mother's home, his daughter struggles with her allergies simply from being around them. Let's just let that sit. So naturally, the writer, thinking it was some kind of weird overstep or maybe even a joke, ignored it. Until he got an email tirade day. A full-blown scolding from this man, accusing the writer of endangering a child and being a spiteful man-child. And then came the legal action. The ex-wife actually tried to take this to court, pushing to get the food ban enforced via the custody agreement. But the judge saw through it, denied the motion, twice. Because a judge understands what should be obvious. You don't get to control what your ex feeds your shared children in their own home, especially not because a new spouse feels entitled to make the rules. Now here's where it gets worse. Rather than adjust or find a compromise, the ex-wife just stopped seeing her kids. She hasn't used her parenting time in a year. Let that sink in. Instead of finding ways to be a mother outside her home or even just driving over to visit her boys, she's chosen nothing at all because they eat cheese or peanut butter or maybe had chocolate after dinner. The writer has tried to bridge the gap, offering meetups, suggesting ways for the boys to still see their mom, but she refuses. She doesn't want to see them unless it's on her terms, in her home, and with her husband's rules enforced. So the boys are left missing their mom, but not missing the place where they feel unwelcome for being, well, kids. And the writer? He's stuck in this emotional tug-of-war, vilified for choosing not to let his sons live under food restrictions that frankly go way beyond reasonable accommodation. And now the ex-wife is accusing him of alienating the kids, telling him he's selfish, that he's robbing them of having both parents. But let's call this what it is: emotional blackmail disguised as co-parenting. This isn't about peanut butter. It's not about eggs. This is about control, about a man entering a family that already had a system and trying to dominate it, and a mother choosing to let that happen, even at the cost of her relationship with her own children. So now the writer is asking, am I the asshole? Let's be real. No, you're not. You're a father standing your ground so your kids can live like normal kids. You're not ignoring a legitimate health issue. You're protecting your sons from being forced into unnecessary restrictions in a place that should feel like home. You didn't stop your ex from seeing her kids. She made that choice. And she's trying to shift the blame to avoid facing what she gave up, all to keep peace with a husband who sees your kids as an inconvenience. That's not on you. You're not alienating them. You're holding space for them. You're showing up. You're giving them consistency, stability, and a home where they're not shamed for what they eat. At the end of the day, your sons will remember who was there, who fought for their normalcy, and who made them feel loved unconditionally. So no, writer, you are absolutely not the asshole. You're a parent doing the hard thing, the thankless thing, the right thing. Title, Am I the Asshole for Telling My Friend Her Son's Name Isn't French? Sometimes, in the name of friendship, we let little things slide. A weird pronunciation, a clumsy attempt at your native language, a wild generalization that makes you bite your tongue because, well, it's not worth the awkwardness. But then there are moments when silence turns into complicity, and you're left choosing between protecting someone's pride or the truth. And that's exactly where the writer found himself. He's French, born and raised. The language is not just something he learned, it's woven into who he is. And now he lives in Canada with his wife, navigating a new life in a new country, but still proudly holding on to the culture that shaped him. One of his close friends, Emma, is Canadian, the kind of friend who doesn't just appreciate another culture, she romanticizes it. Think baguettes, berets, maybe a few misused phrases from Duolingo, and an adoration for the French that veers into obsession. And when Emma got pregnant, she told the writer she had the perfect name picked out, a French name. She was excited, giddy even. This was, in her eyes, a nod to the writer, to his culture, to everything French. But then her husband confided in the writer privately. He told him the name, and that's when the illusion cracked. Because the name, it wasn't French, not even close, it was Italian. And the middle name, an Americanized spelling that made the whole ensemble feel like a Pinterest board gone rogue. The writer didn't launch into mockery or ridicule. He simply mentioned with quiet honesty that the name wasn't French and that people in France wouldn't recognize it as such. It wasn't meant to offend. Just to clarify. Her husband, clearly frustrated from past arguments, agreed. He'd been trying to tell her the same thing, but Emma didn't want to hear it. Fast forward to the big moment. The baby is born. The name is announced with fanfare, a sign, decorations, the whole celebration. And front and center, Emma proudly proclaims the name as inspired by France and my dear friend. Oof, that's when things boiled over. Her husband, clearly at the end of his patience, told her to stop calling the name French. And the writer, he backed him up. Not because he wanted to ruin anything, but because his name, his culture were being paraded around in a misinformed fantasy, and he felt cornered. He gently explained that the first name was Italian, not French, that the middle name had a spelling never used in France. And Emma, she lost it. She accused him of being a killjoy, of ruining her moment, of being rude for correcting her in front of others. She insisted the names were French enough, saying French and Italian names are basically the same. That's when it shifted from misunderstanding to erasure. Because no, French and Italian names are not interchangeable. You wouldn't call a Spanish name Portuguese just because the countries share a border. Culture and language are personal, and they deserve respect, even from well-meaning friends. Now the writer is left wondering, am I the asshole? Let's be real here. No, you're not. You didn't ridicule Emma. You didn't post about it online to mock her. You didn't even correct her in public until she made it public. All you did was offer an honest response gently to someone who insisted on speaking on your culture as if it were hers to define. It's one thing to admire another culture. It's another to claim it without understanding it, and then get angry when someone from that culture gently sets the record straight. Emma may have felt embarrassed, sure, but embarrassment doesn't make the truth an attack. Her husband had been trying to tell her the same thing. She just didn't want to hear it from him or from you. Because sometimes People fall so in love with the idea of something that the reality feels like a betrayal. But what's more disrespectful, quietly letting someone misrepresent your culture to your face, or kindly offering a correction so they don't embarrass themselves further? The truth is, the writer handled this with more grace than many would have. He didn't shame her. He didn't laugh. He didn't even take it personally until he had to. So, no, writer, you are not the asshole. You're the honest friend. And in moments like this, when someone is so wrapped up in their fantasy, they won't see reality. Sometimes honesty is the only kindness left to give. Title: Am I the asshole for telling my mother-in-law to get out of my home? Let's be clear, this isn't just a house. This is a sanctuary, a carefully, lovingly built dream, a reflection of everything the writer has worked for, fought for, and survived. The kind of home that doesn't just happen by chance. It's painted with purpose, designed with memory, and rooted in pain, perseverance, and deep, deep personal pride. And now, that dream is under threat. Not by a stranger, not by some outside force, but by family. Let's go back. The writer, 28, resilient, brilliant, and fiercely independent, was pushed out of her childhood home at just 16, abandoned. Not because of anything she did, but simply because her mother, for reasons never explained, couldn't stand the sight of her. Imagine that. A child, unloved in the one place she should have felt safest. But she didn't fall. She rose. At 14, she was already working, saving, hustling, dreaming. She put in hours most teenagers couldn't imagine, all while carrying the weight of rejection. And fate finally tossed her a rope, an inheritance from her late grandfather, 10 acres of land, $600,000. With that and everything she'd saved, the writer didn't just buy a home, she built one from scratch. By 22, she wasn't just surviving, she had created her own fairy tale. And not just any fairy tale. Her home is whimsical, cozy, and glowing with personality. Cottagecore dreams laced with hobbit charm, kissed with strokes of dark academia. She hand-painted fox families on the walls, wove flowers around doorways. It was magic made real. And then came love. She married a man who saw her, who got it. He adored the house for exactly what it was, a reflection of his wife's soul. They made it a home together, just the two of them and their 4 beloved cats. But like many fairy tales, the villain didn't come cloaked in darkness. She came wearing grief, debt, and the mask of family. The mother-in-law, she lost her husband about a year ago, and in an act of compassion, the writer and her husband offered her the in-law suite, not the house, the separate unit in the backyard. A kindness, not an obligation, and it was fine until it wasn't. The writer and her husband went on a well-earned vacation, 2 weeks of peace, a break. They trusted their home and their cats to a dear friend and coworker, someone dependable, someone who truly cared. But just 4 days into the trip, everything crumbled. The cat sitter called. Panicking, the mother-in-law had hired painters to paint the entire house, not the suite, not her space. The writer's home, her walls, her memories, her work, all of it, gone, white, erased. And to make it worse, she'd locked 3 of the cats in a garage with no AC in a state where it's 80 degrees or higher. 1 cat, missing, gone. The cat sitter was horrified, rightfully so, and the writer, shocked, heartbroken, furious. She wasn't just violated, she was erased. Everything she had poured into that home, every brushstroke and every piece of her heart, painted over by someone who called it immature and childish, but never once asked permission, never once had a conversation. This wasn't just a boundary crossed, this was a line obliterated. And the husband? He's livid too, because this wasn't a miscommunication, this was deliberate. His mother has always resented the house because it wasn't hers. Now, the writer's wondering, would I be the asshole for telling my mother-in-law to get out of my home? Let's pause right there. How is this even a question? No, you would not be the asshole. You would be doing what most people struggle to do, protecting yourself. But it doesn't stop there. In the next update, things spiral fast. The writer and her husband discover that both their credit cards are emptied. $10,000, gone. Money they set aside for emergencies, wiped out. And when her husband confronted his mother, her response, I raised you. You owed me the money. Let that sink in. Not I'm sorry. Not it was a mistake. No guilt. No shame. Just entitlement. a chilling sense of justification, as if raising a child gives you the right to steal from them years later. And when family tried to intervene, the mother-in-law locked herself inside the suite, refused to leave. The police, useless, calling it a civil matter. It's civil until it's criminal. And what she's done walks a fine, terrifying line between the two. But there's one bright light. The missing cat was found, hiding under the garden shed, safe, alive. And honestly, that cat being found feels symbolic, because nothing this woman destroyed can ever truly erase what the writer has built. That house may have been painted over, but the soul of it, the love, the effort, the meaning is still there, waiting to be restored. So am I the asshole for wanting to kick her out? Even. Close. The real question is, how did it go this far? And how many women, how many people like the writer have to tolerate this kind of disrespect just because she's family? The writer opened her home. She showed compassion. She tried to help, and now she's being gaslit, robbed, disrespected, and painted over, literally and figuratively. Sometimes the most radical act of self-love is telling someone to leave. And in this case, that's not rude. That's not cruel. That's necessary. Title, Am I the Asshole for not moving back in with my mom and hanging up on her when she called me crying that she missed me and wanted me back? Sometimes, what breaks a home isn't the loss of a loved one, it's what comes after. This story begins with grief. The writer was only 11 when her father died. That kind of loss, it doesn't just hurt, it reshapes everything. It defines birthdays, holidays, even casual moments that should have felt safe. And for 6 years, the writer lived with that shadow in a home that had once been shared with a man who clearly mattered. Her mother, widowed, lonely, maybe trying to rebuild a version of life, eventually started dating. At first, it was nothing serious. But then came Dan, a single dad with 2 kids of his own, 4 and 6 years old. After 2 years of dating, he moved in with the writer and her mom just 3 months ago. That should have been a new chapter, a fresh start. But not every chapter is worth reading. At first, the writer was cool with it, open-minded, willing to adjust. She wasn't bitter, she wasn't hostile, she gave it a real shot. But then, in the span of 1 week, everything unraveled. The first blow? Coming home from school to find her room destroyed. Her private space, the only corner of the world that felt like hers. Her bed, which she'd made that morning with care, pulled apart. Clothes scattered everywhere. And worst of all, the 4-year-old had urinated on her clothes. The mess was left there for her to clean up. And her mother? She'd taken the kids out of the room, she'd cleaned the toddler, but she didn't touch the writer's space. She didn't protect it. She didn't say sorry. She just expected her daughter to shrug it off. Like this was part of the deal now, and Dan brushed it off. They're just kids. Don't be mad. He defended them, as if being young is a free pass to disrespect someone's space. The writer spoke up clearly and rightfully. Keep your kids out of my room. Simple. Reasonable. She even pointed out the hypocrisy. If she trashed their room, would that be okay? Dan, with the audacity only a step-parent can muster, replied, "You're old enough to know better," as if age justifies a one-way street of respect. That should have been the end of it. A mistake, a wake-up call. But it was as 1 week later it happened again. Her room? Trashed. Again. But this time they went for something even more sacred. A photo. A photo of the writer and her dad. Broken. Gone. The kind of photo that's irreplaceable not because of pixels or ink, but because it held the weight of someone lost. Someone who can't take another photo. Someone whose absence carved a permanent hole in her life. And they broke it, like it was just another toy. They also broke her office chair. But honestly, compared to that photo, the chair might as well have been scrap. This time, the writer snapped. And who could blame her? She told her mom off, called Dan's kids what they were, brats, and said she was leaving. Her mother? She begged her not to be rash. Dan? He physically stood in front of the door, tried to stop her from leaving. That's not love. That's control. He guilted her, said her mom's heart would break if she left. But where was that heart when the writer's space was wrecked twice in 1 week? Where was that heart when the last tangible memory of her father was destroyed? The writer packed up and left, went to her grandparents' house, told herself it might be temporary, but something changed. because for the first time in a while, she felt peace. No mess, no screaming, no disrespect, no tiptoeing around toddlers who have no boundaries, no furniture being broken, no photos being smashed, just quiet. Safety. Weeks passed. Her mom apologized a few times, but the writer, she ignored it, because sometimes apologies aren't enough. Not when the damage goes deeper than a spilled cup or a broken lamp. Then came the call. Her mother, crying, telling her she missed her, begging her to come back, swearing she'd do anything. The writer hung up. And then came Dan's voicemail, a tirade, accusing her of being selfish, saying she was hurting her mother, that she was breaking her mom's heart. But here's the thing. The writer isn't the one who did the breaking. Her mom invited chaos into a space that was supposed to be a haven. She chose a partner over her daughter's comfort, over her grief. And Dan? He thinks this is about being selfish? It's not. It's about survival. The writer is 17 years old, still a kid by most measures. A kid who has already lost a father and now is being told to give up the last shreds of her own space for someone else's family. And let's be honest, Dan's kids aren't the problem. They're young, immature, messy. That's normal. The real problem is the adults, the lack of boundaries, the failure to protect, the gaslighting, the expectation that the writer should just accept it while her world is pulled out from under her. So, am I the asshole for not moving back in with my mom and hanging up on her? No, not even close. The real question is, when did it become okay to expect a grieving teenager to give up everything she loves to accommodate someone else's family? The answer? It never was. Title: Am I the asshole for refusing to pay for dinner for 8 people and telling my mother-in-law everyone should pay for themselves? Sometimes the most uncomfortable moments come not from strangers, but from family. The writer thought she was doing something sweet, something thoughtful. Her mother-in-law texted a few weeks ago suggesting a surprise dinner for her son, writer's husband, for his birthday. A wholesome gesture, right? She even gave the writer a list of the husband's friends and asked her to make the reservation. Not a problem. The writer jumped in, no hesitation. She made the calls, booked the restaurant, took on the emotional labor that comes with organizing something meant to make someone feel loved and celebrated. But then things started to feel off. Out of nowhere, her mother-in-law floated a bold idea. What if we rented a luxury car for the day? Something flashy, something Instagram-worthy. Oh, and by the way, that'd be $1,300. Split between them, sure, but still outrageous. The writer, in the most respectful way, declined, not because she didn't care, not because she didn't want her husband to feel special, but because, like most of us, she's not sitting on a mountain of disposable income, and they already had their own plans in place, a weekend getaway, something intimate and meaningful. That should have been the end of it. But a few days before the dinner, she gets another text from her mother-in-law. This one, even more loaded. Are you going to need help paying for dinner for everyone? Wait, what? Suddenly, there's this silent expectation that the writer, on top of organizing, planning, and navigating the social dynamics, is also going to front the bill for 8 people at a fancy restaurant. 8 people at a high-end place for a surprise party she was asked to arrange. It wasn't even her idea. The writer is now stuck in this awkward position, cornered, trying to figure out how to respond without sounding ungrateful, cheap, or dramatic. But here's the thing. She wasn't being cheap. She was being realistic. The writer couldn't afford it, plain and simple. She already said no to a luxury car. Now they expect her to bankroll a dinner that could easily run up hundreds of dollars. So she did what many people struggle to do. She said no. She told her mother-in-law. She told her mother-in-law, respectfully, that she simply couldn't afford to pay for everyone. And that's when the gloves came off. Suddenly, the writer's father-in-law gets involved. He calls her husband directly, not her, but him, and delivers this backhanded line. We thought you were in a good enough place to pay for everyone. Just like that, the surprise dinner gets canceled, and her husband is now being blamed, shamed for not paying for everyone else's good time on his own birthday. Let's just pause right there. This wasn't his plan. This wasn't her plan. It was theirs. The in-laws decided to orchestrate this grand dinner, delegate the planning to the writer, then try to sneak in the financial responsibility at the last minute. And when the writer set a boundary, they turned it around. Weaponized guilt, blamed the husband, made him out to be inconsiderate, ungrateful, or, God forbid, financially struggling. This isn't about dinner. This isn't about generosity. This is about expectations dressed up as kindness. It's that subtle pressure that says, if you don't do this, you're not good enough. The kind of manipulation that leaves you questioning if you're really being selfish or if you're just protecting yourself from going into debt to appease someone else's ego. And the worst part, this dinner was supposed to be about celebrating him, his birthday, his moment. But somehow it turned into a test, a loyalty check, a performance. So now the writer is asking, am I the asshole for refusing to pay for dinner and saying everyone should cover their own meal? Absolutely not. In fact, you were the only one acting like an adult. You set a boundary. You communicated it. You didn't lash out. You didn't shame anyone. You simply said no. And let's be clear, you were never obligated to pay for everyone else, especially when you weren't the one who decided this dinner should even happen. You were looped in, asked to plan, and expected to fund it without consent, without warning. And now they're trying to ruin the entire event because someone dared to say this is too much. If anything, the in-laws should be the ones apologizing, not for planning something nice, but for trying to disguise control as kindness and for punishing you when you refused to play along. Want a soft suggestion for the writer? Don't feel guilty. You deserve better than being put on the spot like that. And your husband? He deserves a birthday that isn't entangled in other people's expectations and silent judgments. So no, you're not the asshole. Not even close. You're just someone who said no. And sometimes that's the bravest thing you can do. Title: Am I the asshole for refusing to continue breastfeeding the twins I was a surrogate for? Some stories start with love, with sacrifice, with the kind of compassion that most people can't even begin to fathom. This is one of those stories. The writer, a 32-year-old woman, made a decision that would change not only her life, but the lives of those around her. She became a surrogate for her older sister, 36, who, after undergoing cancer treatments, could no longer carry children of her own. The writer gave her sister and brother-in-law a miracle. Twins, born just 3 months ago. It was their embryos, their genetic children, but it was the writer's body that did the work. The pain, the risk, the sleepless nights, the hormonal chaos, the labor. And even then, the writer didn't stop giving. She didn't just carry these babies into the world, she continued to breastfeed them, knowing her sister couldn't. That's love. That's generosity on a level that most people wouldn't even think to ask for. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn. What started as a gift slowly became a demand. The writer agreed to breastfeed the twins. She wanted to help. But now, her sister wants her to breastfeed 5 to 6 times a day in person, or pump enough milk to cover every single feeding. Let's just pause there. The writer has a full-time job. She has a 4-year-old of her own. She is a human being with limits, responsibilities, and a life outside of being a milk source. And yet, when she tried to set reasonable boundaries, when she explained that she could only manage 2 feedings a day and supplement with expressed milk, her sister broke down in tears, accusing the writer of depriving the babies of optimal health. Her brother-in-law joined in too. Via text, of course. No face-to-face conversation. Just a passive-aggressive message that called the writer selfish, claiming she'd already done the hard part, so what's a little more? As if breastfeeding twins on demand while juggling work, parenting, and her own body isn't hard. As if her role, her autonomy, ended the day she gave birth. And then, just when the situation couldn't feel more surreal, she walked into her sister's home to discover a bedroom had been set up for her. Not as a kind gesture, not as a guest room, but as her designated space for round-the-clock feedings. They didn't ask. They didn't check if she was willing. They just assumed, expected. That's when the writer finally said no. She mentioned formula, something millions of healthy, thriving babies are fed every day. She said it was perfectly adequate. And for that, she was told she was abandoning her nephews, that she was breaking some sacred agreement. Let's get this straight. There was no agreement that she would become a 24/7 milk machine. She signed up to carry the twins, not to become their permanent food supply. The final straw came when she left. She walked away without feeding the twins that time. And her own mother told her she should be more understanding. Understanding? The writer gave her body, her time, her emotional energy. She gave life to 2 children she would not raise. And now she's being told that her refusal to continue breastfeeding on command after 3 months makes her the villain? No, absolutely not. Let's be very clear. The writer is not the asshole. She is a woman who gave everything and just now is finally saying, enough. And even then, she didn't say no outright. She offered compromise. She offered to pump, to still contribute, but not at the cost of her own health, sanity, and stability. This isn't about love. She clearly has love. This is about control, about expectations so unreasonable that they erase the human being behind the generous act. And to those who say, well, she signed up for this. No, she didn't. She signed up to be a surrogate, not a full-time wet nurse. What the sister and brother-in-law are doing now, it's guilt, it's pressure, and it's deeply unfair. A message to the writer: your body is yours. Your life is yours. You gave them the greatest gift imaginable. If that's not enough for them, then no amount of milk ever will be. So ask again, am I the asshole for refusing to be their full-time milk supply? Not even close. You're not selfish, you're exhausted, and you have every right to be. Title: Am I the asshole for ending things after my girlfriend secretly recorded me in our own home? Let's talk about trust, the unspoken thread that keeps a relationship whole. You don't see it, you don't hold it, but when it's broken, you feel it. Like a punch to the chest in a place that should have been safe. The writer, a 37-year-old man, was just living life alongside his girlfriend of 4 years. She's 31. Things seemed solid, normal, comfortable. But then, without warning, came the violation. It started on a seemingly ordinary day. The girlfriend had plans, a concert with her sister. Just another night out, right? But before she left the house, she made some adjustments. 3 recording devices. Not 1, not 2, 3. And they weren't sitting out in plain sight. They were deliberately placed, 1 in the bedroom, 1 in the bathroom, and 1 in the back room of their shared home. Let that settle for a second. Not just recording, not accidental, not a phone left out by mistake. She intentionally planted audio devices in private spaces. That's not curiosity. That's not a misunderstanding. That's surveillance. And she walked out the door like nothing had happened. But the writer noticed something. Call it intuition. Call it the discomfort of knowing something's just not right. And sure enough, he discovered one of the devices. Then another, then the third. Imagine the shock, the violation. The home you sleep in. The bathroom where you're most vulnerable. The bedroom where intimacy and privacy are supposed to be sacred. All of it compromised. The writer did what anyone with a racing pulse and a pit in their stomach would do. He freaked out. And he had every right to. When the girlfriend returned, she played it cool, pretended like nothing was off, no mention of the devices, no explanation, just small talk and a slow drift to bedtime, hoping maybe he hadn't noticed a thing. But the next morning, the writer made a move. He asked for her phone. She hesitated. That hesitation said everything. This was a woman who had access to his phone, his passcode, his private world, anytime. But now, when it was her turn to reciprocate, she pulled back. She asked why. And that's when the writer hit her with it. He knew. He had proof. He had taken pictures of the devices, documented everything. Still, she denied it, over and over, even after the evidence was laid bare. But here's where it gets even darker. She finally confessed, but not out of guilt, not out of remorse. She only admitted it because she heard him on the recordings. Yes, she had already listened to them, and she knew the jig was up. That wasn't an apology. That was a cornered response. A confession made not from the heart, but from getting caught. At that point, something shifted for the writer. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a total collapse of security. He no longer felt safe in his own home. And really, how could he? It's one thing to argue, to have issues. It's another to plant audio traps in the one place where you're supposed to let guard down, where walls are meant to shield, not record. So the writer made a call. He told her it was over. He moved her out of the bedroom. He reclaimed his space, his peace. Now the question is, am I the asshole for doing that? Let's be real here. This wasn't about a little white lie. This was about premeditated surveillance. The writer's trust wasn't just broken, it was violated in the most personal way. And she only admitted to it because she got caught. Not a hint of genuine remorse, just deflection, denial, and a half-hearted confession after the damage was done. You don't put someone through that and expect the relationship to bounce back. You don't hide microphones in the bathroom and call it love. The writer didn't blow things out of proportion. He didn't yell. He didn't humiliate her. He ended the relationship quietly and rightfully. Because when someone shows you they don't respect your privacy, when they make your home feel like a crime scene instead of a sanctuary, you don't owe them your forgiveness. You owe yourself freedom. So no, the writer is not the asshole. He's a man who drew the line where it needed to be drawn. And to everyone out there, if trust needs surveillance to survive, it was never real to begin with. Title, Am I the Asshole for Giving My Unemployed Brother 30 Days to Move Out of My Inherited Home with His Kids? Sometimes, the line between compassion and being taken advantage of isn't a line at all. It's a slow blur. You don't even realize it's disappearing until you look up one day and realize you're drowning in someone else's chaos in your own home. That's where the writer, 29 years old, found themselves. After losing their grandmother, the writer inherited her home, a space filled not just with furniture and walls, but with memories, warmth, and meaning. That house wasn't just a roof. It was a legacy, a quiet, sacred place where the past lived gently in each creaking floorboard and faded armchair. But that peace didn't last long. The writer's older brother, 32 years old, recently divorced, broke, and overwhelmed, was struggling. He had 2 young children, aged 7 and 5, and nowhere to go. And like any good sibling would, the writer opened their door. They offered sanctuary. No rent, no utilities, just a place to rest, recover, and rebuild. Temporary. That was the word. It always starts that way. But 10 months passed. Not 2, not 3, nearly a full year. And not only was the brother still there, he wasn't trying to leave. While the writer clocked in and worked day after day, the brother lounged in front of video games, unbothered. No job applications, no interviews, no effort, just controller clicks and passive excuses. And all the while, 2 young children ran through the home, not out of malice, but out of youth, and left behind broken pieces of the grandmother's cherished antique furniture, scratched wood, cracked glass, a lifetime of memory chipped away without apology. The writer bit their tongue. They waited. They gave space. But then came the breaking point. A truth spilled out like cold water on the spine. The brother had been receiving $2,000 a month from their parents this whole time. Not for food, not for rent, to save for a home. That's what he told them. But instead, he spent $1,200 on a gaming setup. He wasn't rebuilding, he was coasting. That's when the writer said, enough. They gave him 30 days, 1 month, to pack up, find somewhere else, and move on. After nearly a year of free shelter, utilities, and grace, they gave him a deadline. And then, the guilt tripping began. He exploded, called the writer heartless, accused them of making his kids homeless. Not once did he mention the months of free living. Not once did he acknowledge the furniture damage, or the $2,000, or the gaming rig. He framed himself as the victim. Then the parents called. They parroted his words. Family takes care of family. They offered to pay his way a little longer. They begged the writer to reconsider, to be more compassionate for the kids. But here's the truth they won't say out loud. Compassion doesn't mean sacrificing your peace indefinitely. Kindness isn't an invitation to be used. Family doesn't mean turning your home into someone else's permanent excuse. The writer wasn't asking for rent. They weren't evicting with no warning. They weren't angry about kids being kids. They were simply saying, this is my home. It's time. And what did the brother do in return? He made the writer the villain, because it's easier than taking responsibility. Let's be honest, this isn't about punishing children. It's about confronting a grown adult who refuses to act like one. The kids don't need a free ride. They need a father who steps up. So is the writer the villain here? Are they the asshole for finally saying enough? No, absolutely not. They showed patience, grace, restraint. But grace has limits, and peace is not a luxury, it's a right, especially in your own home. The writer is not the asshole. They're a human being who did more than enough for far too long. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do is stop enabling someone who refuses to change, because at the end of the day, inherited or not, a home should feel like home, not like a burden. Title: Am I the asshole for refusing to let my bio dad adopt me and not engaging in family therapy? Sometimes people forget that family isn't built in a courtroom. It's built in late-night talks, shared pains, small moments, and years of showing up. And when someone fails to do that for years and then returns expecting open arms, it's not stubbornness they're met with. It's hurt, and hurt has roots. The writer, now 17, has lived with a lot more than most teenagers. From the moment they were born, life wasn't wrapped in the neat bow of a happy nuclear family. In fact, their biological father was already halfway out the door. When the writer was just a few months old, he walked out and left them behind with their mother and paternal grandparents. That's it. No drawn-out goodbye, no noble reason. He left. But then life hit harder. At the age of 3, the writer's mother passed away, just 3 years old. And before she left this world, she made one final powerful decision. She had her parents, the writer's grandparents, adopt their grandchild. It was her way of protecting them, keeping them safe, making sure they wouldn't be left adrift. And strangely, the bio dad signed off on it without a fight. According to family, he was even happy to do so. So the writer grew up with grandparents who loved them, real love, the kind that doesn't need therapy to prove itself. But fate wasn't done pulling the rug out. Grandpa passed away when the writer was 9. Grandma followed just 4 years later. And in those final years, she pleaded with the bio dad to get involved. Just show up. Just try. He didn't until the very moment she was gone. That's when he made his move. With the writer still grieving the only family they truly had, the bio dad, this stranger who hadn't been there for the scraped knees, the birthdays, the heartbreak, fought for custody and won. The writer, barely a teenager, was forced to leave behind aunts, uncles, cousins, all the people they'd known. They weren't just relatives, they were family. But now, they were being ripped away. So at nearly 14, the writer walked into a house full of strangers, a father they didn't know, a stepmother, 5 half-siblings under the age of 10, a whole new world they didn't ask for, with people who kept asking them to embrace the family. But you can't just manufacture connection. You can't force it into existence. It's been 3 years, and the pain hasn't faded. It's calcified. Now, bio dad and his wife want more. They want adoption. They want the writer to legally erase their late grandmother and grandfather, the very people who stepped up when he didn't, and replace them with 2 people they still have no true bond with. They even tried to push therapy to fix the relationship. 7 therapists in 2 years. And every single time, the writer sat silently. Not to be dramatic, not to be rebellious, but because there's nothing to say. You can't build trust with someone who didn't earn it. You can't pretend your soul feels safe in a house where you were placed against your will. Worse, even the kids, these young, innocent voices, are now asking the writer to just be our brother and agree to the adoption. The pressure is coming from all sides. Even the in-laws are getting involved, lecturing, shaming. And the writer? They're standing their ground. They told their bio dad, if you let me go, I might not hate you and your whole family. And his response? I want you to embrace the family, not move away and never see us again. There's a difference between wanting to fix things and trying to own someone. And for the writer, this entire push for adoption feels less like love and more like rewriting history. A clean slate for the bio dad, a way to say, see, I was always here. But the truth is, he wasn't. And when you've been abandoned, dragged through grief, forced into unfamiliar homes, and guilt-tripped for not getting over it, how can anyone call you the problem? So now, with their 18th birthday approaching, The writer is counting the days until they can go back to real family, their uncle who's waiting to take them in, waiting to let them choose peace again. And the question looms, are they the asshole for not wanting to pretend, for not caving to pressure, for not giving up on the people who never gave up on them? Absolutely not. They're not the asshole. They're a survivor of emotional whiplash, grief, and manipulation disguised as love. They are someone who knows what family should feel like and isn't willing to trade it for something that simply looks like it on paper. Sometimes saying no is the bravest thing a person can do. And in this case, it's also the right thing. Am I the asshole for telling my stepsister that if I were her real mom, I'd be disgusted that she replaced me? Sometimes families break, and what's left behind is not something that can just be patched up with therapy sessions or shared holidays. This story from the writer, a 16-year-old navigating the raw mess of grief, blended families, and deep-rooted resentment, takes us right into the heart of that brokenness. The writer and their stepsister are the same age. Two teens, forced into sisterhood not by blood, not even really by choice, but by tragedy. Each of them lost a parent when they were just 5 years old. Two little kids, each grieving, whose surviving parents found each other at a support group and eventually married. That's where the story begins. But not all wounds heal at the same pace. From the very beginning, the stepsister embraced this new family. She called writer's mother Mom even before the wedding bells rang. In her eyes, she had a first mom, and now she had the mom who was raising her. Maybe it was her way of surviving the loss, of stitching her heart back together. But the writer? It was different. When they met their stepfather, all they felt was dread and grief all over again. The idea of calling someone else dad was unthinkable. Their real father was gone, irreplaceable. That title, that bond, that role, it wasn't up for substitution. And yet this new man tried to fill shoes that the writer simply refused to let go of. And here's where things get painful, because the writer never asked for any of this. They didn't ask to be put in a house where everyone else seemed eager to play happy family, while they were still carrying the ghost of a father no one else remembered. They were just a kid, grieving, hurting, and then expected to smile at dinner and share bedrooms and take family photos with a man they barely knew, and a stepsister who expected instant sisterhood. From the outside, it may look like Ryder was the cold one, the one who couldn't just accept love. But inside, it's far more complicated than that. Their stepsister tried relentlessly, and when that effort wasn't reciprocated, it turned to bitterness, accusations. She'd call the writer heartless, say they were ruining the family. At 13, she told the writer that if they couldn't love their new family, maybe they should go be with their dad. Yes, the one who's passed. That kind of cruelty cuts deeper than any sibling bickering. It's a direct hit on the one person the writer was still holding on to. And then came last week, a fight that wasn't just another teen blow-up. It felt like the culmination of years of resentment, unspoken words, and bruised loyalties finally exploding. It all started over Father's Day. Ryder had gotten something to bring to their dad's grave. Simple, private, grief turned ritual. But their stepsister? She lost it. She screamed about how Ryder didn't appreciate her dad, the stepfather, and how it was unfair that only the biological dad got that attention. And then she went too far. She told the writer that their real dad would be ashamed of them, that he'd be disappointed, that if there was an afterlife, the writer would never see him again. Alone. Forever. It's hard to imagine hearing something more venomous from someone you're supposed to call family. So the writer snapped. They told her to go to hell, essentially, and then dropped the line that lit the match. If I were your real mom, I'd be disgusted that you replaced me. Was it harsh? Brutal even? Yes. But let's not forget, this wasn't just about one bad moment. This was years of grief, crashing into years of rejection. Two kids who were never allowed to process loss properly were shoved into one house, told to play siblings, and scolded every time it didn't go smoothly. And now, the writer's mom is furious. Not at the stepsister, not at the emotional manipulation, not at the years of passive aggression, but at the writer for saying what she says was too far. Let's pause there. Yes, what the writer said was hurtful, cruel even. But sometimes when someone wounds you deep, questions your connection to your lost parent, mocks your grief, you bite back. And when that pain has been bubbling under your skin for a decade, it erupts. The writer didn't start this war, but they sure as hell finished that battle. And now they're asking, am I the asshole? Well, what do you call a kid who never got the time or space to grieve, who's been treated like a broken piece in a perfect picture family they never asked to be a part of? What do you call someone who's forced to sit in therapy rooms and be fixed like they're the problem just because they don't fake affection? The truth is, this isn't about being an asshole. This is about survival. This is about grief. This is about two children dealing with loss in opposite ways, one clinging tight to anything new, the other holding fiercely to what's gone. Maybe what the writer said was cruel, but sometimes cruelty is born from exhaustion, from fighting battles alone for years while everyone else pretends nothing's wrong. So no, I don't think the writer is the asshole. I think they're a hurting teen in a house where no one truly sees the pain behind their silence. And when someone's grieving, the last thing you should do is try to replace the people they lost. Would you say the same thing if this were your story? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Am I the asshole for exposing my sister's fake cancer to our parents after she refused to come clean herself? Some betrayals don't come with raised voices or broken plates. Some come disguised as illness, wrapped in hospital gowns and bald heads, hiding beneath stories so heartbreaking that no one would dare question them. This story, it's one of those betrayals, and it begins with a lie so dark, so calculated, that it left an entire family reeling. The writer, a 34-year-old woman, had watched her younger sister, 31, walk through the shadow of something unimaginable. At least, that's what she thought. 8 months ago, her sister came to the family with devastating news. She had cancer. And not just any cancer. This was the kind of diagnosis that shatters families. The kind that rearranges priorities, clears calendars, pulls parents from their own lives to sit by your side. She shaved her head. She claimed she was undergoing chemotherapy. She said the side effects were brutal, that the pain came in waves, and the family rallied around her. Their parents even moved in with her to care for her during the supposed treatment, because that's what families do when someone they love is dying. But over time, things started to feel off. The writer noticed her sister still had too much energy. People going through aggressive chemo don't bounce back like that. She was staying out late. She never allowed anyone to accompany her to appointments. And still, her story never changed. No cracks, no hesitation, just pure performance. But even the best liars slip. In a moment that could only be described as fate or perhaps karma, the truth began to unravel at a small-town coffee shop. The writer casually mentioned her sister's name to the office manager of the oncology clinic where her sister claimed to be receiving treatment. The response? Confusion. The office manager didn't recognize the name, not even a flicker of familiarity. And that was the turning point. The writer dug deeper, spoke to other doctors, chased the truth like it owed her answers, and eventually cornered her sister with the evidence. And when confronted, her sister broke. There was no cancer, no chemotherapy, no appointments. The shaved head, the tears, the sorrowful sighs at family dinners, it was all part of a manipulative scheme. Why? Because she was drowning in debt. She couldn't afford her rent anymore. So she invented cancer to manipulate their parents into moving in and footing the bills. Let that sink in for a moment. This wasn't just a desperate decision made in panic. This was a constructed, prolonged performance over 8 months designed to exploit sympathy, to use grief as a tool, to hijack the unconditional love of parents. And worse, she kept lying even when caught. The writer was livid, and rightfully so. She gave her sister a choice. You have 24 hours to come clean to our parents, or I will. The sister begged her not to say anything. She didn't deny what she'd done, but she pleaded for secrecy. Not because she regretted it, but because she wanted time to stage a fake recovery. Yes, she planned to fake her way out of it with a miraculous Hallmark movie-style ending where the cancer just disappears. She didn't care about the damage. She cared about maintaining the illusion. But Ryder refused to let it go on. The next day, she told their parents the truth. Every detail, The lies, the motive, the manipulation. And now, their parents are shattered. Imagine watching your child suffer through cancer and then finding out it was all a lie, a play, a betrayal of the most sacred trust between parent and child. And the sister? She's not apologizing. No, she's furious, not because she hurt the family, but because she got exposed. She says the writer ruined her life. That family should protect each other, not out each other. That loyalty means covering for each other, no matter what. But let's be honest, is it really loyalty if it means helping someone lie to the people who love them most? Is it truly betrayal to tell the truth, especially when someone's been exploiting a family's compassion? This wasn't a harmless white lie. This was a full-scale emotional scam. And the worst part is how it cheapens real suffering. There are people right now, real people, actually battling cancer, fighting for their lives. And here's someone using their pain as a prop in her twisted story just to escape debt. It's not just cruel, it's grotesque. The writer didn't expose her sister out of malice. She did it because someone needed to stop the lie, because parents deserve to know the truth. Because if there's any hope of rebuilding trust, it starts with honesty, even when it hurts. So, is the writer the asshole? Not even close. She was the one person in the story who refused to let lies stand. The one person who prioritized truth over appearances, even when it meant becoming the villain in her sister's eyes. That takes courage. That takes a backbone. And sometimes telling the truth is the bravest and hardest thing you can do. What do you think? Was the writer right to expose her sister, or should she have let the lie play out a little longer to protect the family? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Am I the asshole for walking out of my parents' anniversary party when my brother announced his engagement to my ex? Sometimes it's not the grand betrayals that hurt the most, it's the ones that come dressed in smiles and champagne toasts. It's not always about old wounds reopening, sometimes it's about the quiet disrespect of never being considered at all. The writer, a man who once loved deeply and lost quietly, just wanted to honor his parents. It was their 40th wedding anniversary, a milestone, a celebration of enduring love. The kind of day meant for nostalgia, laughter, and family coming together in joy. But instead, it became a stage for a revelation no one saw coming, least of all him. Let's rewind. The writer dated someone seriously in college. This wasn't a fleeting romance or a passing crush. This was a relationship that lasted 4 years, the kind that shapes your early adult life. Anyone who's had that kind of connection knows it lingers, even long after the romance fades. It's not always about love lingering, it's about history, memories, emotional muscle memory. They broke up 8 years ago, time passed, life moved on. But that bond, it wasn't erased, just shelved in a quiet corner of the past. Then came the bombshell. The writer recently learned, through the grapevine, not from family, that his own brother, had been secretly dating his ex-girlfriend for the past year. Not just dating, but seeing her behind the scenes, completely in the dark, never saying a word. And why? According to the brother, it was to avoid making the writer angry. Think about that. Not, I was worried you'd be hurt. Not, I didn't know how to approach this carefully, just, I didn't want to deal with your reaction. It was never about care. It was about convenience. Still, the writer didn't explode. He didn't make a scene then. He challenged him, yes, but calmly. He asked for honesty, for consideration, for some shred of sibling respect, but he got none. Fast forward to their parents' 40th anniversary celebration, a day that should have been about honoring a lifetime of marriage. Generations gathering, glasses raised, memories shared. Instead, the brother walked in with her. No warning, no heads up, just the kind of emotional ambush that knocks the wind out of you. The writer hadn't seen her in nearly a decade. No contact, no closure, no expectation. And now she was walking into a family celebration on the arm of his brother like it was the most normal thing in the world. As if that history didn't exist. As if none of it mattered. But then came the real gut punch. Mid-meal, mid-celebration, right in the center of it all, they stood up and announced their engagement. Smiles. Cheers. His mother crying tears of joy. And the writer? He sat there, shell-shocked, watching the past collide violently with the present. and no one had even thought to tell him in advance. Now, let's be honest. This isn't about jealousy. The writer says it clearly. He no longer has romantic feelings for his ex. But this wasn't about romance. This was about respect, about dignity, about boundaries that should never have been crossed without a conversation. Because here's the thing. It's not that they're together. It's how they went about it. Secretly, silently, and then parading the relationship and their engagement at his own parents' anniversary party with zero regard for how that might land. It wasn't just inconsiderate, it was calculated. So he did what any human being with an ounce of pride and pain might do. He walked out, not to ruin anything, not to be dramatic, but because staying in that room felt like erasing himself. Like sitting in silence would mean approving of the disrespect. And yet, his brother followed him out in anger. They argued. The writer told him, "You should have warned me." And what did the brother say? "You're being self-centered. You ruined the party." Then later, a phone call from his dad. Not to ask if he was okay. Not to say, "I had no idea." No. His father told him he had humiliated the family. Let that sink in. The man who was blindsided, disrespected, and ambushed was now being painted as the problem because he couldn't swallow his pain quietly enough, because he had the audacity to feel something and leave instead of smiling through betrayal. And that's the core of it all. This story isn't about love or jealousy, it's about erasure. About being asked to be okay with something no one had the decency to prepare him for. It's about being expected to stay silent, to nod politely, to pretend something deeply personal and painful doesn't exist. And when you're forced to sit in a room where your feelings aren't even a passing thought to the people closest to you, that's not family. That's theater. So, is the writer the asshole for walking out? Absolutely not. He didn't scream. He didn't ruin speeches. He didn't flip a table. He walked out, quietly, because that was the only power he had left in that moment, to remove himself from a place that no longer felt safe. This wasn't selfish. This was self-preservation. And sometimes, that's all we can do. What do you think? Was the writer justified in leaving? Or should he have gritted his teeth for the sake of the party? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Am I the asshole for leaving dinner with my parents after they called my girlfriend disgusting? There's a moment when you've spent your life trying to forgive people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, where you start to believe maybe, just maybe, they've changed. That's where the writer was. After years of feeling invisible, after a childhood filled with absence instead of affection, she finally allowed herself to hope that her parents had grown into people capable of compassion. But hope, as we know, can be a double-edged sword. The writer, a 32-year-old woman, has been dating her girlfriend, let's call her Ruby, a 48-year-old woman, for about 10 months. And for the first time in a long string of failed, painful relationships, the writer finally felt respected, seen, safe. The kind of connection that doesn't ask you to shrink, to justify yourself, or to earn love in pieces. Ruby, it seems, brought calm where there had only been chaos before. Now, for context, the writer and her parents, their bond wasn't built on bedtime stories and birthday cakes. It was built on neglect. The kind that doesn't always leave bruises, but leaves scars, emotional ones that linger long after the doors close behind business trips and empty vacations. She wasn't raised. She was outsourced, shuffled from nanny to nanny, left behind while her parents moved through their pristine, carefully curated lives. And when she got older, the silence just got quieter, more permanent. But in recent years, they started reaching out, tentatively, as if brushing dust off a photo they suddenly wanted to keep. The writer was cautious, because when you've been forgotten, the sudden sound of interest feels more like a trick than a reunion. Still, she let them in, slowly, carefully. She gave them a second chance, not because they earned it, but because she hoped they would. And when she introduced Ruby to them, their reaction was swift, judgmental, and as cold as the years they'd spent ignoring her. The age gap, they said. The dynamic. It wasn't right, but the writer stood her ground. She'd spent too many years quiet. This time, she made her boundaries clear. Support me or leave me alone. They chose at the time to quiet down, or so it seemed. Which brings us to dinner, a seemingly normal evening, a restaurant. 4 seats, 1 cautious daughter, 1 supportive girlfriend, 2 parents being given yet another chance. And for a while, things felt okay. Not perfect, but civil. Until Ruby, in the most gentle and natural way, leaned in to give the writer a quick kiss on the lips before heading to the bathroom. It was nothing grand, no spectacle, just affection. Simple, quiet love. And the moment she walked away, the writer's mother struck, with no warning, no build-up, just venom. Ruby absolutely disgusts us. She's disgusting. That wasn't just a comment, that was a slap, a rejection, not only of Ruby, but of her, the writer, her happiness, her choices, her worth. The writer sat there, stunned. The kind of stunned where the room goes quiet, except for the sound of your heart thudding in your ears. She barely heard the rest of their explanation, because how do you listen when you're trying not to break? Without raising her voice, without drama, the writer calmly flagged down the waitress. She paid the bill, and in a moment filled with more strength than anyone at that table likely understood, she left. She walked away. Not from just that dinner, but from a lifetime of being made to feel like she wasn't enough, not important enough to protect, not human enough to respect. When Ruby returned confused, the writer explained everything in the cab ride home. She cried, not just for what had happened, but for what it represented. That even now, even after everything, her parents were still incapable of simply loving her. And Ruby, she didn't scold, she didn't question, she comforted, which says everything you need to know about why the writer is with her. But of course, the fallout didn't stop there. Now her parents are blowing up her phone, lecturing her, scolding her for walking out, looping in aunts and uncles who had no stake in her life before, but now suddenly think they have a say, telling her she owes them an apology, that she embarrassed them, not themselves, not their cruelty, not their vile words to a guest who had done nothing wrong. No, their focus is on her reaction, not their own actions. This is what emotional manipulation looks like when it's dressed up in family concern, when people who failed you think they still own you. So, is the writer the asshole for walking out of that dinner? Let's be very clear. Absolutely not. She didn't make a scene. She didn't scream. She didn't throw drinks or flip tables. She simply left. And in doing so, she reclaimed something they never gave her freely, her dignity. This wasn't about age gaps. It wasn't even about Ruby. This was about people who were given grace, given forgiveness, given space, and then chose to spit on it. Sometimes walking away isn't petty, it's powerful. And the writer, she's not heartless for leaving. She's just tired of trying to squeeze love from people who don't know how to give it. What do you think? Was the writer wrong to walk out, or was that the only sane move when the people meant to love you can't show the basic decency of respecting your partner? Let me know in the comments. Am I the asshole for not letting my best friend stay at my house again after she told me we're not family? 12 years. That's not just a friendship. That's a chapter of your life. That's someone you've seen cry over breakups, laugh until they couldn't breathe. Someone you've let into your space, your heart, your home. That kind of connection becomes more than casual. It becomes sacred. And for the writer, it wasn't just a label. It was real. Her best friend, that was family. So when her friend, this woman who had just spent a month living under her roof, sharing dinners, memories, and even her bed, looked her in the eyes and said, "We're not family," that wasn't just a comment. That was a fracture. Let's back up. The writer had invited her best friend into her home again, not the first time. And like always, it wasn't a guest arrangement. It was make yourself at home. The kind of welcome that says, you belong here. She even says she's always viewed close friends as chosen family. That's a phrase people throw around, but for the writer, it meant something. You could feel that. Then came the Miami trip. One of those end of the vacation, we're tired and slightly grumpy kind of days. You know the vibe. Everyone's low energy, bags half zipped, nerves a little frayed. That morning, the writer thought she'd be wearing a pair of sneakers her friend had offered for the trip. No big deal, until her friend decided to wear them herself, which again, totally fine. Her shoes, her choice. The writer didn't get upset about that. But when she asked to borrow another pair and got a dodgy, unclear response, the moment tipped. Not into full-blown drama, but into tension. The writer asked, "You don't want me to wear these, right?" Her friend finally said no, and the writer, a little irritated, said, "Just say that then." Let's pause there. Was that sentence the most graceful? No. But let's be real, we've all had moments like this. You're tired, it's early, things aren't going smoothly, and you say something with a bit more edge than you meant. The writer didn't scream, didn't insult, just let a little frustration peek through. Later, trying to smooth things over, she apologized. She explained she owned her tone. That's growth, that's accountability. But what came next? That's where the real damage happened. Her friend looked her in the eye and said, "I talk to my sisters like that, but we're just friends, not family." Just friends. It's those two words that hit like a gut punch, because how do you go from weeks of sharing a home, cooking meals with her family, being told you're like a sister, to that? Suddenly, the foundation the writer had believed in for 12 years didn't feel so steady. It felt conditional, fragile, like one slip, one moment of imperfection, and the family title could be stripped away just like that. And let's be clear, the writer didn't think that gave her a pass to speak however she wanted. She even says that. But she thought the closeness they shared came with a little grace, a little understanding. Instead, she got a reminder that to her friend, their bond had limits. She tried to clarify, to explain, to open the door for mutual accountability. She even pointed out that her friend had also been off that morning, short and cold, but that part got brushed aside. No apology, no acknowledgement, just silence. Then, almost as if to reset the tone, the friend says, "Me and other friend are going to North Carolina this weekend if you want to come. It's an open invitation, I guess." I guess. Those two words, again, that hesitation, that distance, that unspoken coolness that suddenly replaced warmth. The writer, after all that, is left sitting with this question. Do I let her stay again? Do I keep opening my home to someone who closed the door on our bond the moment things weren't perfect? She's not trying to punish her friend. She's trying to protect her peace. Because that kind of emotional whiplash, that hurts, especially when it comes from someone you thought of as family. So would she be the asshole for drawing a boundary? Absolutely not. Let's talk about that word, boundary. It doesn't mean cutting people off. It means choosing what kind of energy you'll allow in your space, in your life, in your heart. The writer has been generous, loving, vulnerable, and in one shaky moment, when she needed her friend to say, "Hey, I get it. We're good," what she got instead was, "We're not family." That's not a light thing to say. That's not something you can just sweep under the rug. The writer isn't asking for perfection. She's asking for reciprocity, for grace, for friendship that holds firm even when the mood isn't light and the sneakers aren't agreed on. So no, she wouldn't be the asshole for saying, "I need space, I need trust, I need to know I'm not just family when things are easy." That's not cold. That's not mean. That's healthy. Because chosen family should feel like home, not like walking on eggshells. So what do you think? Is the writer right to step back, or is this a moment to forgive and move on? Let's talk about it in the comments, because sometimes the people we love most are the ones who can hurt us in ways strangers never could. Am I the asshole for canceling my vow renewal ceremony and choosing something more private instead? 15 years. That's not just a number, it's a testament. A battle-worn, love-earned, hard-fought commitment forged through youth, pressure, and parenthood. The kind of story people don't always take the time to appreciate. But the writer? She never forgot where she came from. And now she just wanted to celebrate how far she and her husband had come. The writer met her husband as a teenager, young, in love, and full of plans. They were planning a wedding, dreaming of it even. She had already bought the dress when life took its own path. Pregnancy, responsibility, and a father's ultimatum that pushed them into a courthouse wedding at just 19. There were no vows under an autumn sky, no first dances or cake cutting, just two people trying to make a life, forced to compress a love story into something practical. Now, 15 years later, with time, wisdom, and their own property, a piece of land that finally felt like home, the writer wanted to reclaim that moment. She didn't ask for extravagance. She didn't need grand gestures. She just wanted a vow renewal that felt like her, something to say, we made it, and we're still choosing each other. She chose Halloween for the date, fitting because she and her husband have always leaned into that dark, witchy, gothic aesthetic. This wasn't just a party, it was a celebration of love on their terms, and she shared that dream way back in January. Then, cue the sister. Now, don't get it wrong, the writer was genuinely happy for her sister. The sister had her own vow renewal only 3 years into marriage, and it was beautiful. There was no bitterness in that. But somewhere in the aftermath, her sister decided she knew best, and she took over. No one asked her to. No one needed her to. But suddenly she was making changes like it was her own event. First came the suggestion to change the date. To suit their dad, of course. Because apparently the celebration isn't about the couple, it's about convenience. Never mind that this was a 15-year milestone. Never mind that this day meant something personal to the writer. Then came the venue suggestion, her own house, 3 hours away, in snowy terrain. Again, not about what the writer envisioned, but about what was easier or better for everyone else. And then she crossed a quiet line. She started sending the writer dresses she thought were better suited, as if the writer wasn't capable of choosing how she wanted to look on a day meant to reflect her journey. But the worst wasn't the logistics. It wasn't even the unsolicited opinions. It was the phrase that stuck like a shard of glass. This isn't about you. It's about being considerate of others. Can we just stop for a second? It's her vow renewal. 15 years after a rushed courthouse wedding, and someone's telling her it's not about her. There's a kind of pain that doesn't show up as shouting or crying. It's quiet. It's the kind that makes you shrink into yourself, start questioning if celebrating your love is selfish. But the writer, she didn't spiral. She didn't lash out. She did something better. She turned, looked that ridiculous comment in the face and said, "You're right. It's not about me. It's about Dad. So I'll just do something more private instead." And honestly, that wasn't just a comeback. That was a power move. Now, the writer is envisioning something stripped of all the drama, just her partner, and 2 or 3 close friends, a small, intimate ceremony in the woods, fall leaves crunching underfoot, a Halloween theme in its rawest, most beautiful form, gothic, peaceful, sacred. Because that sounds like healing, that sounds like love, that sounds like something deeply hers. So now she's wondering, would she be the asshole for canceling the big vow renewal and doing it her way? For not telling anyone else? For choosing peace over pressure? Let's be honest, absolutely not. Because this isn't just about one event. It's about reclaiming something that was taken from her at 19. It's about making room for joy, not managing egos, not performing for family, not rearranging her dream to make others comfortable. Some people forget, just because something is a celebration doesn't mean it comes without emotional weight. The writer is still carrying the memory of being rushed into marriage before she had the chance to feel like a bride. This vow renewal, it was meant to give her that moment back, but instead she was being pushed into a vision that didn't belong to her. And in that moment, when she realized she had a choice, she took it. She chose a ceremony that reflects her love, her story, her magic. So no, the writer is not the asshole. She's someone who knows her worth, who knows that celebrating love shouldn't require sacrificing your peace, who understands that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is take the day back. So what do you think? Should the writer go ahead with her peaceful woodland vow renewal and keep it just for her and her closest circle? Or does family always have to be involved, even when they try to take the wheel? Let's talk about it, because love is personal, and the way we honor it should be too. Am I the asshole for demanding my unemployed roommate pay me back after seeing her buy a MacBook? 2 years. That's how long the writer and her roommate had been sharing space, dividing bills, splitting chores, navigating the awkward and often fragile ecosystem that is cohabitation. It wasn't just about rent or groceries. This was a shared life, even if only in the logistical sense. And for the most part, it worked. Sure, the writer had a slightly larger room, but she made up for it by carrying more weight in the kitchen, cooking more meals, contributing in her own way to keep things balanced. It was give and take. the unspoken kind of give and take that makes living with someone bearable, even comfortable. But last month, everything shifted. The roommate lost her job. It happens. Life is unpredictable. The writer didn't judge. She didn't hesitate. She didn't demand spreadsheets or proof of job applications. Instead, when her roommate came to her, vulnerable and embarrassed, asking if she could cover the rent until things got better, she said yes. Not because she had money to burn, not because she was in a position to play savior, but because she was a friend. And sometimes friendship means saying, "Don't worry, I've got you," even when you have to quietly sacrifice behind the scenes to make that support possible. The writer did sacrifice. She passed on a weekend getaway with her own friends, something she'd been looking forward to. A break, a breather, a little reward for working hard. But she skipped it, tightening her budget instead, just so her roommate wouldn't have to worry about eviction on top of unemployment. It's the kind of decision that feels heavy but right. Until the scales tip. Because yesterday, everything cracked. The writer walked in from work, tired, maybe a little hopeful the job search was going well, and instead, she saw something she couldn't unsee: her roommate unpacking a brand new MacBook. Not a refurbished bargain deal. A brand new 2,000 plus luxury item. Alongside it, clothes, shopping bags, the kind of purchases that scream splurge, not survival. Now let's pause there. Can you imagine? You've just covered someone's rent. You've bent your own needs and wants to help them stay afloat. And then, like a gut punch, you see them enjoying luxuries you yourself gave up. The writer asked, reasonably, how she could afford all this. The roommate got defensive. She said the money was from her parents, sent for her birthday. A gift, she claimed, meant only for these purchases, as if that somehow absolved the situation. But the writer wasn't angry about the gift. It was what the roommate chose to do with it. If she could afford to buy expensive tech and trendy clothes, why wasn't paying back the rent part of that? Why wasn't honoring the help she'd been given at least a consideration? Because here's the thing. Just because someone offers to help doesn't mean you get to ignore the cost, especially when they're not financially secure themselves. The writer tried to explain that, calmly but firmly, that this wasn't about being petty or materialistic. It was about principle. She had sacrificed for her friend, and now her friend was choosing luxury over loyalty. The roommate broke down. Tears, accusations. She flipped the situation, calling the writer materialistic, saying she didn't understand her problems, as if the writer wasn't facing her own. And the next morning, an envelope. Half the rent money and a cold note. "I'll pay the rest when I can. I won't talk to you much anymore." No apology, no ownership, just distance. So now the writer is left wondering, am I the asshole for demanding money that was owed, for feeling betrayed, for expecting that if you help someone, they should, at the very least, be thoughtful with how they use their resources? Let's be honest here. Absolutely not. The writer didn't ask for anything unreasonable. She didn't storm through the apartment, flipping tables or throwing guilt around like confetti. She asked for basic respect, for accountability. This wasn't about punishing someone for being gifted money. It was about priorities. Because when someone helps you survive a rough patch, you don't turn around and treat yourself like everything's fine while they carry your load. That's not friendship. That's entitlement dressed as need. The roommate may not be the worst person in the world, but she's acting selfishly. And the writer? She's not cold-hearted. She's just tired of being generous in a world that often takes generosity for granted. So, no, the writer is not the asshole. She's someone who did the right thing, even when it cost her comfort. And now she's simply asking for fairness in return. But what do you think? When help is given freely, does it still come with moral obligations? Should gifts be used however the recipient pleases? Or should there be a sense of responsibility when others are sacrificing for you? Let's talk about it, because generosity should be honored, not exploited. Am I the asshole for bailing on a girls' trip that turned into a couples trip? What do you do when something you've looked forward to for months, really looked forward to, suddenly shifts into something that feels, well, like it's no longer meant for you? That's exactly the situation our writer found herself in. This wasn't just a casual getaway. It was the girls' trip. The kind of sacred tradition you plan with your closest friends. A cozy cabin in the woods, matching swimsuits, silly snacks, deep talks under the stars, and wine-fueled laughter that only happens when you're surrounded by your people. No pressure, no expectations, just them. The writer, her best friend, and their other mutual bestie had been coordinating this trip for months. Outfits were picked, food was planned, and the calendar was cleared. For all three of them, this wasn't just a birthday celebration. It was bonding time, a breath of fresh air from life's relentless routine. But then, things shifted, subtly at first. A crack in the plan that slowly widened into something harder to ignore. The best friend's husband, let's call it what it is, got his feelings hurt. He wasn't invited. It was a girls-only thing, and while that should have been okay, somehow his sadness made its way into the plan. Suddenly he was coming. No big discussion, no compromise. Just there. Then, like dominoes falling, the mutual bestie decided to bring her boyfriend too, brand new, not even fully known to the group. And just like that, what was supposed to be a sacred circle of women transformed into a cozy little couples retreat, with the writer stuck smack in the middle. And here's where the ache really sets in. The writer is a lesbian. Her partner, the one person who might have balanced this awkward shift, is abroad for the summer. No one else to call. No one to tag in. She's suddenly the fifth wheel, watching plans change around her like she wasn't even part of them anymore. The cabin only has 2 bedrooms. Guess who's sleeping on the air mattress in the living room while the couples retreat to their rooms for late-night cuddles? And maybe more? Can you feel the loneliness creeping in already? It's not just about the logistics. It's not just that she won't have a bed. It's that this trip, this space, this moment was supposed to be something special, something soft and sacred for just the girls. Instead, it now feels like a backdrop for other people's intimacy, a front row seat to something she can't participate in. And here's the heartbreaking part. The writer knows some of this sadness is fueled by jealousy, that ache of missing her partner, watching others hold hands while her own hands remain empty. But it's more than that. It's the disappointment of being left behind emotionally, of watching plans morph into something unrecognizable without anyone really asking how it would make her feel. So she asks, would I be the asshole if I bailed? And let's sit with that. Because she's not asking for a refund. She's not demanding gas money or sending angry texts. She's not torching friendships over it. She's just quietly stepping back, recognizing that this isn't the trip she signed up for, and wondering if protecting her peace makes her the villain. And the answer? No, absolutely not. The writer isn't bailing out of pettiness. She's choosing not to sit through a weekend of quiet discomfort just to keep up appearances. And sometimes that's the braver choice. In fact, what's striking here is her self-awareness. She knows she loves these people. She knows this isn't about malice or betrayal. No one deliberately excluded her. No one tried to hurt her. But the truth is, sometimes plans change in ways that leave people out. And it's okay to feel hurt by that. It doesn't mean the friendships are over. It doesn't mean there's no love left. It just means this trip isn't for her anymore. And walking away from something that no longer feels like home, that's not being selfish. That's being honest. In an update, the writer shares that the trip isn't even happening anymore. Life, with its usual unpredictability, threw a wrench into everything, and the cabin retreat got canceled for unrelated reasons. But more than that, the writer uses this moment to clarify something deep and true. She loves her friends. Deeply. Genuinely. The foundation of their friendship isn't cracked by this one incident. It's bigger than one awkward trip. There's history here, memories and moments that can't be erased by a shifted vacation plan, and that's what matters most. So no, the writer is not the asshole. She's just someone who wanted to feel included, valued, and seen. And when that didn't happen, she chose self-respect over silent suffering. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not go. So let's put the question to you. Have you ever had plans change so much that they no longer felt like yours? When is it okay to bow out? And what do we owe to our friends when the dynamic shifts? Because love and boundaries can exist in the same room, and the real ones will always understand.